Life was steady, predictable until he showed up. One conversation, one moment of honesty, and everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered. This is the story of how an outsider's words forced me to see the truth I've been avoiding for years. Welcome to today's story. Whether you're new to this channel or have been here before, I hope you'll help me reach 1,000 subscribers soon. Your support motivates me to keep bringing you more heartfelt and inspiring stories. Thank you so much. Today's story is about facing a turning point in life and relationships. Have you ever felt invisible in your own marriage? Have you ever wondered if the person you love truly sees you for who you are? This is a story about rediscovery, courage, and the power of honest conversations. Let's dive in and see how the characters navigate their challenges and find their way back to each other. Stay tuned until the end, it's a journey worth watching. Life at 45 wasn't supposed to be this complicated. I had it all figured out, or so I thought. My name is Clara Bennett, and I've spent the last 2 decades building a life that looked perfect from the outside. A cozy home in the suburbs of Seattle, a loving husband named Ethan, and a career as a freelance graphic designer that allowed me to work from home. But lately something felt off. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a quiet unease that had settled in my chest. Ethan and I had fallen into a routine that felt more like autopilot than a marriage. We'd have dinner together, watch a show, and then retreat to our respective corners of the house, him to his home office and me to my studio. We were like 2 satellites orbiting the same planet but never truly connecting. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday and Ethan was working late again. My best friend Lila had invited me over for dinner. Lila and I had been inseparable since college, and her husband Daniel was one of those guys who seemed too good to be true. Charming, successful, and always the life of the party. That night, as I sat at their dining table, picking at my pasta, Daniel dropped a bombshell that would shatter the illusion of my perfect life. "Clara, can I talk to you for a minute?" Daniel asked, his voice unusually serious, cutting through the light-hearted chatter of the evening. I glanced at Lila, who was busy clearing the table, her laughter ringing out as she joked with one of the other guests. For a moment I hesitated. Daniel's tone was off, too heavy, too deliberate. But I nodded anyway, curiosity tugging at me. "Sure, what's up?" He gestured toward the sliding glass door that led to their backyard. "Let's step outside for a second. It's quieter out there." I followed him, the cool evening air hitting my skin as soon as we stepped outside. The backyard was bathed in the soft glow of string lights, their golden hues casting a warm, almost magical light over the space. The stars were out, scattered across the sky like tiny diamonds, and in the distance, the city lights of Seattle glimmered faintly. It was the kind of night that made you feel small in the best way possible. Reminded you that the world was vast, and your problems, no matter how big they seemed, were just a tiny part of it. But Daniel's expression told me this wasn't going to be a casual chat. His usual easygoing demeanor was gone, replaced by something far more intense. He shoved his hands into the pockets of his jeans and took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what he was about to say. "I've known you for years, Clara," he began, his eyes searching mine. "And I've always admired how strong you are. You're the kind of person who just keeps going no matter what life throws at you. But lately I've noticed something, and I can't keep quiet about it." My stomach churned. There was a weight to his words, a gravity that made my chest tighten. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He took another deep breath, his gaze dropping to the ground for a moment before meeting mine again. "It's Ethan. I don't think he sees you, not really. You're always there for him, supporting him, putting his needs first. But when was the last time he did the same for you?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I opened my mouth to defend Ethan, to say he was a good husband, that he loved me, that he was just busy with work, but the words caught in my throat. Because the truth was, I couldn't remember the last time he'd truly looked at me. Really looked at me. Daniel must have seen the turmoil in my eyes because he stepped closer, his voice softening. "Clara, I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because I care about you, and because I've been where Ethan is. I know what it's like to get so caught up in work, in life, that you forget to see the person standing right in front of you." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Memories flashed before my eyes. Ethan coming home late, his face buried in his laptop, barely glancing up to say hello. The way he'd forgotten our anniversary last year, brushing it off with a quick, "I'll make it up to you." That never happened. The nights I'd spent alone waiting for him to come home, only to fall asleep before he even walked through the door. "I don't know what to say," I admitted, my voice trembling. "Ethan's a good man. He works hard. He provides for us. I can't just—" "Clara," Daniel interrupted gently, "being a good provider doesn't make someone a good partner. You deserve more than just stability. You deserve to be seen, to be appreciated, to be loved in a way that makes you feel alive, not just comfortable." His words struck a chord deep within me, a chord I hadn't even realized was there. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to let them fall. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Daniel hesitated, his jaw tightening as if he were wrestling with something internally. Finally, he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Because I care about you, Clara, and because I've been where Ethan is. I almost lost Lila because of it. I was so focused on building my career, on proving myself, that I didn't see how much I was neglecting her. It took her almost leaving me for me to wake up and realize what I was risking." I stared at him, stunned. I'd never heard Daniel talk about this before. He and Lila always seemed so solid, so unshakable. The idea that they'd been through something like that was almost hard to believe. "I don't want that to happen to you," he continued, his voice earnest. "I don't want you to wake up one day and realize you've spent years feeling invisible. You're too amazing for that, Clara. You deserve someone who sees you, really sees you." His words hung in the air between us, heavy and unrelenting. I felt a lump form in my throat, my mind spinning with 1,000 thoughts and emotions. Part of me wanted to argue, to defend Ethan and the life we'd built together. But another part of me, a part I'd been ignoring for far too long, knew there was truth in what Daniel was saying. "I don't know what to do," I whispered, my voice breaking. Daniel reached out, his hand brushing against my arm in a gesture of comfort. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just think about it. Think about what you want, what you need. And if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." I nodded, unable to find the words to respond. The weight of his words pressed down on me, forcing me to confront feelings I'd been burying for years. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if Daniel had peeled back a layer of my carefully constructed facade and seen the truth beneath. We stood there in silence for what felt like an eternity, the cool night air wrapping around us like a blanket. The sounds of the party inside felt distant, muffled, as if they belonged to another world. Finally, Daniel cleared his throat and took a step back. "We should probably head back inside," he said, his tone lighter now, though his eyes still held a hint of concern. "Lila's probably wondering where we are." I nodded again, forcing a small smile. "Yeah, let's go." As we walked back toward the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside me had shifted. Daniel's words had planted a seed, and no matter how much I tried to ignore it, I knew it was already beginning to grow. The drive home that night was a blur. The city lights streaked past my windshield like smudges of paint on a dark canvas, their glow fading in and out as I navigated the familiar streets. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my knuckles white, as if holding on too hard could somehow steady the storm raging inside me. Daniel's words echoed in my mind, over and over, like a broken record I couldn't turn off. "You deserve to be seen. When was the last time he truly looked at you?" Each phrase felt like a knife twisting in my chest, cutting through layers of denial I hadn't even realized were there. I replayed the conversation in my head, every word, every pause, every flicker of emotion in Daniel's eyes. He had seen something in me, something I hadn't been able to see in myself, and now I couldn't unsee it. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that only comes late at night when the world feels like it's holding its breath. I passed the park where Ethan and I used to take walks on Sunday mornings back when we still made time for each other. I drove by the little cafe where we'd shared our first anniversary dinner, laughing over glasses of wine and promises of forever. Now those memories felt like they belonged to someone else, to a version of me I barely recognized. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as it always did, neat, unassuming, a picture of suburban normalcy. But as I stepped inside, the silence hit me like a wall. The air was heavy, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Ethan was in his usual spot, hunched over his laptop at the kitchen table. The glow of the screen illuminated his face, casting shadows under his eyes. His dark hair was messy, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and his glasses were perched precariously on the edge of his nose. He looked so familiar, yet so distant, like a stranger wearing the face of the man I'd married. "Hey!" he said without looking up, his voice distracted, almost robotic. "Hey!" I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt like the word got lost in the space between us, swallowed by the silence. I stood there for a moment watching him. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of the words I needed to say but didn't know how to. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see me, really see me. But instead I just stood there, frozen, my mind racing. "Ethan," I finally said, my voice trembling. "Can we talk?" He looked up then, his brow furrowed in confusion. "About what?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The words felt heavy on my tongue, like they might choke me if I didn't say them fast enough. "About us." The conversation that followed was one of the hardest of my life. It wasn't just the words, it was the weight of them. The way they hung in the air between us, heavy and unrelenting. I told Ethan how I felt, how I'd been feeling for years. I told him about the loneliness, the sense of invisibility, the fear that we were just going through the motions. And as I spoke, I felt something inside me crack open, like a dam finally giving way after years of pressure. First, he was defensive. His brow furrowed, and he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest as if to shield himself from my words. "Clara, I've been working so hard for us," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "I thought you understood that. I thought we were on the same page." His words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I do understand, Ethan," I said, my voice breaking. "I understand that you're working hard. I understand that you're trying to provide for us. But I need more than just understanding. I need you to see me. Really see me." There was a long silence after that. The kind of silence that feels like it's stretching on forever, filling the space between us with unspoken words and unresolved tension. I could see the gears turning in Ethan's mind, his expression shifting from frustration to confusion to something else. Something softer, more vulnerable. And then he did something I didn't expect. He reached for my hand. His touch was tentative at first, his fingers brushing against mine as if he wasn't sure how I would react. But when I didn't pull away, he took my hand in his grip firm but gentle. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't realize. I didn't know." His words caught me off guard. I had expected more defensiveness, more excuses, but instead, there was a rawness in his voice that I hadn't heard in years. It was the voice of the man I'd fallen in love with, the man who used to look at me like I was the only person in the room. "I didn't know you felt this way," he continued, his eyes searching mine. "I didn't know I was making you feel invisible." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to let them fall. "It's not just about feeling invisible, Ethan," I said, my voice trembling. "It's about feeling like we're not even a team anymore. Like we're just two people living in the same house, going through the motions." He nodded slowly, his thumb brushing against the back of my hand in a gesture that felt both familiar and foreign. "I get that," he said quietly. "And I'm sorry. I've been so focused on work, on making sure we're taken care of, that I didn't realize I was neglecting the most important thing, us." His words hung in the air between us, heavy and unrelenting. I wanted to believe him, to believe that this was the start of something new, something better. But there was a part of me that couldn't let go of the fear, the doubt that had been building inside me for years. "I want to believe you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I need more than just words, Ethan. I need actions. I need to know that you're willing to put in the effort to make this work." He nodded again, his expression serious. "I am," he said firmly. "I know I've messed up, Clara. I know I haven't been the husband you deserve. But I want to fix this. I want to be better." There was a sincerity in his voice that I hadn't heard in a long time, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. But even as I felt that flicker of hope, there was a part of me that couldn't shake the fear. The fear that this was just another empty promise, Another moment of vulnerability that would fade as quickly as it had come. The fear that no matter how much we wanted to fix things, we were too far gone. "I want to believe you," I said again, my voice trembling. "But I'm scared, Ethan. I'm scared that this is just another moment, that nothing will really change." He squeezed my hand, his grip firm but gentle. "I know," he said quietly, "and I don't blame you for feeling that way, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm serious, that I'm committed to making this work." There was a long silence after that, the kind of silence that feels like it's stretching on forever, filling the space between us with unspoken words and unresolved tension. But for the first time in what felt like forever, it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was a silence filled with possibility, with the promise of something new. And as I sat there, holding Ethan's hand and looking into his eyes, I allowed myself to hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. That night marked the beginning of a new chapter for us. It wasn't easy, change never is, but we started making an effort to reconnect. We went on dates, had long conversations, and even started couples therapy. It was a slow process, filled with moments of hope and frustration, but for the first time in years, I felt like we were moving forward. Our first date was awkward, to say the least. We went to a small Italian restaurant downtown, a place we used to love but hadn't been to in years. The conversation was stilted at first, both of us tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. But as the evening went on, we started to relax, to laugh, to remember why we fell in love in the first place. "Remember when we used to come here every Friday?" Ethan asked, a small smile playing on his lips. I nodded, feeling a pang of nostalgia. "Yeah, we'd order the same thing every time. Spaghetti carbonara for you, lasagna for me." He chuckled, his eyes softening. "And we'd always share a tiramisu for dessert." It was a small moment, but it felt significant. For the first time in a long time, we were truly present with each other, not just going through the motions. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of tension, of frustration, of doubt. We started couples therapy, and those sessions were some of the hardest conversations we'd ever had. We talked about the years of neglect, the loneliness, the resentment that had built up between us. It was painful, but it was also cathartic. We were finally addressing the issues that had been festering beneath the surface for so long. And then there was Daniel. His words had been the catalyst for everything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his concern than just friendship. One evening, after a particularly intense therapy session, I found myself standing outside his office, my heart pounding in my chest. I knocked on the door, and he looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Clara," he said, his voice warm but cautious. "What brings you here?" I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, and I sat down, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence stretched between us, heavy and unrelenting. "Why did you say what you said that night?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Because I care about you, Clara," he said, his voice soft but firm. "And because I've been where Ethan is, so focused on work that I almost lost what mattered most." His words hung in the air between us, heavy and unrelenting. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to let them fall. "I didn't realize how much I was neglecting Lila until it was almost too late," he continued, his voice tinged with regret. "I was so caught up in building my career, in proving myself, that I didn't see how much I was hurting her. It took her almost leaving me for me to wake up and realize what I was risking." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. "And you think that's what's happening with Ethan and me?" He nodded, his eyes searching mine. "I don't know for sure, Clara, but I do know that sometimes it takes an outsider to show us what we can't see ourselves." There was a long silence after that, the kind of silence that feels like it's stretching on forever, filling the space between us with unspoken words and unresolved tension. Finally I spoke, my voice trembling. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "for saying what you said, for making me see what I couldn't see myself." He nodded, his expression softening. "You're welcome, Clara. I just want you to be happy." His words stayed with me long after I left his office, a reminder that sometimes, It takes an outsider to show us what we can't see ourselves. And as I walked home that night, I felt a flicker of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Ethan and I could find our way back to each other. And that's the end of today's story. What do you think? Have you ever been in a situation like Clara's, where you felt unseen or unheard in a relationship? Or maybe you've been in Ethan's shoes, so caught up in life that you forgot to truly connect with the person you love? Whatever your thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Leave a comment below and share your feelings or insights. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. Your support means the world to me, and it's what keeps me going. Thank you for staying until the end and for being part of this journey. Until next time, take care and keep believing in the power of honest conversations.